we all at the end of the day have the same goal, and that's to deliver amazing application. They're making this huge investment trying to pay or purchase its
Are
outcome.
there other skills that you learned that allowed you to be a successful business app consultant, eventually architect?
Consulting is being an advisor. When I first got into this, I was hyper focused on the technology. Those skills didn't offer me what I needed to thrive. That's why I lean heavily on communicating, talk to the client, because my company just threw us in there.
What's something practically you try to remember before you send that Teams message or before you send an email?
It's not necessarily us against the client. It's us and the client. You're the one helping the client get where they need to go. It's easy just to kind of throw your hands up and walk away and quit. What can you do better to make the situation improve?
Rephrasing your questions where instead of just asking who did this or who messed this up, you should phrase your questions of, okay, what can I now do to fix this?
Realize where they've been, be a bit more reassuring, help them to see that you're going to actually deliver. And that starts with building that relationship.
Do you have a good example where showing empathy on a project helped or saved the project?
Product owner, quite frankly, wanted the product to fail. If we would have got to know that, then we could have got people together. I tend to default to what's best for the client, and sometimes it's telling the client no.
How do you practically find ways to say the corporate language and the right things, as well as allowing your personality to shine?
I don't necessarily say that. I think that's probably the first time I ever said that. So that's the first on your show. The one skill that helped me to really thrive in this industry.
Hey, welcome to this episode. My name is Griffin, the host of Citizen Developer, and today I have with me a star in the space, Will McLendon. Now, Will is a Power Platform manager at RSM, which is a professional services provider, as well as an IT solution developer and IT consulting firm. And Will has a knack for leveraging his technical expertise alongside his emotional intelligence to leverage the capabilities of the Microsoft Power Platform for the businesses he works with. And with over 20 years of consulting experience and 10 years of developing high ROI business applications, Will is able to provide unique insights into how to navigate client conversations and ultimately deliver a successful project. Oh, and he is a Microsoft MVP. So, got to add that in there. Will, welcome to the show.
What's up, Griffin? How you doing, man? I'm glad to be here, man.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. Whenever I talk to you, it's always just like two guys just hanging out, you know. And I wanted to start today's conversation off. So I met you 2 years ago when I was pretty much brand new to the consulting space, the Microsoft Dynamics space, the Power Platform space. Now, I don't want to start our conversation talking about that. I want to talk about a book recommendation you made to me. And it was called The Question Behind the Question. And the book is effectively written on the principle to eliminate, BCD, or blaming, complaining, and defending, out of your vocabulary, out of your life, how you conduct yourself. Um, I want to ask you, why did you recommend this book? You weren't just, calling me out. You weren't
Yeah,
saying you
let's.
need this, but to the
Yeah.
group and to myself, why do you recommend this book?
Yeah. So yeah, first and foremost, when I first met you, I knew you were a star in the making, and it was awesome to just like go back and forth with you because I learned a lot. Just watching you and the other I want to say associates, but uh,
Sure.
associates realistically, and for future talent, future stars, just grow in that short period of time. When I recommended that book, though, it was because that was the book that was recommended to myself. And when I asked my mentor, I said, "Why did you have me read this? I don't do that." He goes, "Just wait till you know your first real project." And business applications and consulting in business applications is different than any other type of consulting you'll have to do. And it's so it's so encompassing where it touches on the mental and physical side of the brain. It just that book will help you get out of the box, not necessarily fall back to the default, which can be blaming the client. It helps you to kind of stop, gather yourself, and ask yourself a really simple question: what can you do better to make the situation improve? And so it's kind of hard to do that in different times in consulting, right? We projects are always on fire. Nothing's ever nothing's ever perfect. It's easy just to kind of throw your hands up and walk away and quit. But really, that book really help me, and I think it helped others just to figure out, hey, how do we pump the brakes and develop a solution? You know, naturally, there's some things I agree with the books and that I don't, but you're naturally going to have emotions.
Yeah.
There's going to be frustrating points, but really, it just says, hey, gather your thoughts. What can you do better? And how can you make it better the next time around? And I think that's something that everyone should learn in consulting because that's how we are really good consultants. That's how we become better. We're advisors to clients. So an
Yeah.
advisor has to have poise and to know a good way out.
You were alluding to this, and so that if people are wondering, okay, how is blaming, complaining, defending related to a question? An example that the book kind of gives and talks a lot about is like rephrasing your questions, where instead of just asking who did this or who messed this up, who broke this functionality, who introduced this bug, who didn't, put good acceptance criteria in here. Um, Instead of phrasing your questions like that, you should phrase your questions of, okay, what can I now do to fix this? Or what
Yeah,
do I need to do better so that the next time this doesn't happen, whether it was truly my fault
yeah.
or not. And you were alluding to this, but maybe just paint a little bit more of that picture of how in consulting and even in software development, how much more crucial that can be and how easy it can be to point those fingers and BCD.
I mean, well, you know this, and I'm gonna probably get in trouble for saying this. You and I have a one-on-one conversation, and I remember I told you, I said you're gonna be working on teams, and I said you're gonna be the leader. I specifically said, you know, hey
Mhm.
Griffin, you are gonna be the leader, and it's easy to point fingers and say, as a team, as a leader, you did this wrong, but you know that's nothing but a glorified task manager. If you're truly going to lead and help a team out or help a teammate out, you're only as good as your team or your weakest member of your team. You have to kind of empower, and so with that, it comes a level of accountability. So for me, this, I'm a stickler for communication. If I drop the ball, I'm quick to say, "Hey, my bad, my apologies. We'll figure it out. Let's get where we need to go." Um, but communicating, knowing your teammates. Uh, if, like, for example, let's take testing. QA is meant to annoy you. I don't care what anybody says. We all roll our eyes and we're like, "Oh my God, it's in the instructions." We have to pause. These testing steps are going to be how those users are essentially trained. So if we don't write clear testing or have a real good testing criteria, it's natural to have these questions. So the question goes back to me: did I make my instructions clear enough so that any tester or anybody can do it? And if the answer is no, then you have some room for improvement. If the answer is yes, well, then what else do we need to do to make it better for our end users or our testers in that case? So it's all about teamwork because in consulting, it's not necessarily us against the client. It's us and the client, and you're the one helping the client get where they need to go. So they're a part of that vehicle. We're all on the same bus, so we don't want to throw anybody under it.
Yeah. What are some things practically you try to remember? And these are all be patient, have empathy, take the blame. These are all like really great. They would make a great, LinkedIn post header, phenomenal, right? But
Yeah,
but what's something practically you try to remember and maybe try to practice before you send that Teams message or before you send an email? I mean, this is something I admire about you is your composure. What are some nuggets that I can take that will allow me to be
man, you're being very nice about that. So what you guys don't know is I always have a safe space, right? So I try to make that for others. There's somebody you can go to maybe outside the project that you can just kind of get the emotion out of it, right? Um, Nothing wrong with opening a notepad and writing down what you really want to say, and then coming back after the emotion's gone and asking, okay, how is this going to improve it? Don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, there's people on your project. You guys become like family. So there are those moments where you have those one on ones. But again, that should be one on one, not necessarily one with five other people in the room, right? You have to have an area where you guys can talk privately and be able to express those those missteps. But what I do is, I'm not always poised. I have over my time, I have been very pointed, direct. Um, if there's a mountain I'm willing to die on, then so be it. But oftentimes, I tend to default to what's best for the client and what's best for our practice or for our partner. Um, and sometimes it's telling the client no. Sometimes it's just, you know, really trying to do a little bit more question asking, even if the client's frustrated. One instance was um, clients oftentimes, they're really good. They'll send us a list of information, requirements ahead of time. And this isn't systemic to RSM. This is systemic to Hitachi. This is all the consulting firms, right? So clients kind of tell us what we need to know in order to create something as awesome as a salve, right? And then we all of us have had these ceremonies where we do a project kickoff, and depending on the methodology, if it's not waterfall, we do a little bit more requirements gathering. And clients oftentimes go, "I've already told you these things, and you have already," and you kind of have to deal with it, put up with it. They pretend as if you're not prepared, and then you kind of have to teach them, "Hey, this is how software development goes." So, you may initially be annoyed because the client will call you every other name on the planet during those first initial meetings. They will insult your intelligence. They will call you all sorts of things if they're a frustrated client. But you may not know is that they've probably been through this exercise 10 times before they got to you. So when I say be empathetic is you realize that, no one likes repeating themselves 100 times. So realize where they've been, be a bit more reassuring, uh, help them to see that you're going to actually deliver. And that starts with building that relationship. And so, all these things, being empathetic, having those, people you can talk to confidentially rather, I'm sorry. And, ownership that helps with good team building.
It's so funny to me that you mentioned that. So, not too long ago, I was going through a blueprint of a project, and this was a fairly long blueprint. It was a pretty big project. It had CE, it had F&O, it had several third-party integrations. So just a lot of stuff we need to hash out and talk about and figure out. And I realized that the our product owners that we were talking with, they, happy with maybe what we've designed and different things, and not the most outspoken sort of people.
Yeah.
The
Sure.
moment we're doing our blueprint delivery and their bosses are in the room,
Uh-huh.
all of a sudden they're way more outspoken and poke
Uh-huh.
holes in this and challenges in this. And it was definitely there were a lot of things that I took from that experience, and nobody was, rude or anything like that.
Right.
No one was unprofessional, but I thought it was interesting how even just the dynamic of who's in the meeting can impact how people speak to each other, especially with on the client side,
Yeah.
and different things.
Absolutely. If the product owner's boss is in the room or office, expect them to be a bit more vocal. It's You have to understand they're from the client side, they're making this huge investment trying to pay or purchase its outcome. And they're the ones responsible for making sure this investment, has real ROI. And so when they're there attending these meetings, which may be a normal ceremony that we've all done through, um, they have their relationship with you, but they have to also prove that they are being, careful, prudent, all sorts of buzzwords with this initiative. And so it's a big deal. You're like, man, wait, well, I thought we were real cool at first, and all of a sudden they're like, man,
Yeah.
you kind of got me on that one, right?
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure I asked you 5 times if you wanted, this
Oh yeah.
form for this particular, persona, and it just it happens, and but you take the good with the bad in any relationship. It's man, Chuck Ingram, love him to death, and Mike Hawk, love them. They're both just phenomenal, phenomenal guys at Congruent X. Um, Chuck helped me understand a long time ago, and Mike too. It's all about relationships, and so knowing the people in the room, knowing who they report to, it's all part of getting to know somebody in a relationship. So if you see that person join that call, expect for them to be a bit more vocal, right? You just know that about it, right? And then don't take it personally. It's just, hey, they're doing their job, right? It's at the
Certainly.
end of the day, they're doing their job. And I know you did that, man. You do so well where you're at and what you do. I'm just, man, I'm
Well, thank you.
back.
I appreciate that, and it's definitely, yeah. It was a huge learning lesson for myself, and hopefully to encourage any other consultants out there or different things. Because I mean, I was by no means the boss of the CE implementation. I was just given an opportunity to step up, and now I'm getting these fiery arrows shooting right back at me. With all the head honchos in the room, but no, it was great and a good experience. Now, something else that you mentioned a couple of times, right? The word empathy, and I know you try to embody empathy and everything that we're talking about with the QBQ book and everything. And this might be on the spot, but do you have a good example where you think either do you have a good example where showing empathy on a project helped or saved the project, or maybe an example where not having empathy really hurt the project?
Man, yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I'm a of course be gentle and not mention the names on this one. So because I know you got a huge audience, and then I just don't want to make any hot takes on this. And we know how small this community is, right? So I'm gonna be very gentle. So when I first started off, we're gonna talk about not having empathy. Power Platform is kind of new. We're building this amazing application. Um, our product owner, they quite honestly didn't understand the platform. They wanted to do something else, and they were a bit combative. And so, not me. This wasn't on me. This wasn't my circus, not my monkey. I'll put it that way. I was working for another work stream, but we were all under the same umbrella. And they pulled me in a couple times to kind of deal with this product owner. So um, there were two individuals that were responsible. One person is probably the most gentle human being on the planet. The other was the complete opposite. He was very very direct, had no problems with pointing out errors on your side, and so naturally when they try to do this tag team approach for the product owner, the product owner gravitated to the one that was a bit more gentler. Anyway, as time grew on, the other one took over, and ended up almost getting us kicked off of the project, because they were just pointing fingers. You weren't here for this. You weren't here for that. You weren't here for this. You weren't here for that.
This
And
was
that was
this
true.
was the team you're on were pointing fingers at the customer.
Yeah, they were pointing
Okay.
fingers at the customer, and that may very well be true because the product owner, quite frankly, wanted the product to fail. Yeah. But here's the funny part: as it escalated, um, one of the I think very gentle here. One of the higher ups, uh, took the gentler approach. We get it. You don't like it. It's cool. It's fine. Let's take that off the board. Why don't you like it? What's really going on here? And I remember, like, saying to myself, yeah, why hasn't anyone asked that question? And quite honestly, it was based around capabilities and that she wasn't involved in making the decision as to bring in the Power Platform. That's all it was around. She wasn't involved in making the decision. And so she was naturally, it didn't matter who was going in there. It could have been Salesforce, it could have been SAP, it could have been anything, right? Because she wasn't involved, she was, dead set on shooting it down. So it was outside of us. If we would have got to know that, then we could have got people together and could have been a big win for us. But it ended up us doing some dancing. Now that's a lot of talking. I'll be real short for this next one. This is just recently. Um, the project, one of our product owners, we're on the hook for a few things, but once we transfer for our deliverables, it's once the transfer of deliverables, including the documentation and along with the code is hung over. It's yours. You own it. Um, the internal support IT staff is wants to know how to support this monstrosity of application that was built, because there's low code options. You and I both know that, and there's pro code. This one was pro code, and they almost had, when we dropped it in their lap. Well, when it was dropped in their lap, they almost had a heart attack. Um, in comes Will off of vacation, and there were a lot of emails going back and forth, and I simply said, "Hey guys, let's slow down. We have to protect our organization, but let's just kind of use some common sense here. We just dropped a bunch of code, and literally, it's natural for them to freak out. So let's do this. Schedule a couple meetings where we went through, talked about it, simple ceremonies that everyone know about, but understanding where they've been and where they were dealing with, a little bit of empathy. So kind of helped save the engagement. I mean, although we were technically done, it led to additional services that we could offer to help with maintenance. So it's cool. It works. Empathy does. It's just showing a little bit of understanding. That's all.
If you are thinking to yourself that you want to get into low code development or learn about the Power Platform, then I want to personally invite you to sign up for this completely free self-paced course that is going to cover everything you need to know to begin low code development today. Not too long ago, I was a complete beginner and I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know what the Power Platform was. The content in this course is handpicked by me so you can understand the basics of the Power Platform and ultimately be prepared to take the PL 900 certification if that's something you're interested in. If you are interested, be sure to follow the first link in the description down below, and do not forget to use the promo code YouTube at checkout in order to get the course for completely free. This is going to give you immediate access to the entire course so that you can start to change your future today. Now, let's get back to the conversation. How do you practically find ways to show empathy, be professional, say the corporate language and the right things, as well as allowing your personality to shine through? Now, I understand these aren't mutually exclusive things. Like, not saying, and when do you find ways to be yourself and be rude, and when do you find ways to be professional? But
So
I think there's a balance, right, between letting your personality shine through. Maybe you're
yeah,
someone who's a little sarcastic, likes to crack a joke, and different
yeah,
things. How do you balance that?
yeah. So I mean, Griff, you play sports, right? Everyone has a role on a team, right? There are different. You kind of see what you were a defensive lineman, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. So depending on what the offense is spinning up, how do you react, or how do you switch it up? It's just kind of reading the room. So there are times where I'll bring it out. Chris Simmons, he's a TSP at Microsoft now, but I'll name drop him because he's a good man. Chris was probably the one of the best directors at Avanade Accenture. There are others there, but I'm not going to name them right now. But Chris was arguably one of the best, and Chris was responsible for this low code platform. But Chris could read a room like no other. Chris knew when to be incredibly friendly, and Chris knew when to be, to give that seriousness that comes with executive presence. Chris knew when to be stern, and Chris knew when to be kind. Um, but that was just who he was. So it's just being balanced, knowing, reading the room, knowing the time and place for everything, and just kind of just going from there. There are times where I don't think it's being rude, Griff. Like I think you're just being direct. If a client is being abusive to your resources, then you need to let the client. It's your job as an advisor to let the client know that there is a code of conduct. That's not rude. If somebody is yelling, because clients do yell at us sometimes, then you can, like I've done in the past, I've excused members of my team to have that one-on-one conversation with the client. It's not, again, we all at the end of the day have the same goal, and that's to deliver an amazing application or fix an outcome. And so knowing it's a relationship, it doesn't mean the relationship's over. It just means that we're, hey, just reminding each other and building it and being truthful. And sometimes clients like it, sometimes clients don't. Sometimes it escalates and it blows up, but seldom times I've never been fired because of being truthful and forthcoming to a client. I've never been fired for that.
I find too, it helps keep things a little bit lighter
Hmm.
and you know not so serious and stressful if you allow some of your personality to shine through and
Oh,
different
yeah.
things. I know, I mean, myself, especially being a younger guy, it might be easier for me to be a little sarcastic or crack a joke here or hop on camera with a hoodie and a beanie on in a client call or something. And so, but something with that is if, say, I've been on a project for 4 months and I've never been sarcastic or cracked a joke. And now all of a sudden today I'm super sarcastic in how I'm speaking to the customer. You know, it doesn't seem like, oh, Griff's funny keeping it lighthearted. It seems, oh, Griff just woke up on the wrong side of the bed today.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and that happens. Like that happens, man. So the minute I'm the minute I'm not smiling because it's not my natural disposition to smile, I have a mental cue and I've taught myself to do that. The minute I have my resting face, people
we
think
know,
I'm
we know.
upset. And I'm like, I'm not upset. I'm just ugly. I'm sorry. So I have to remind myself to sometimes smile. And there are days, honestly, where I'm just quiet because I spent the last 3 hours talking to somebody about the project that's on fire and fixing it. And then you have to come into a meeting. And guess what, guys? I'm not going to tap dance for everyone. I'm just going to be, quite frankly, just going to be very serious. I'm not mad. I just don't have the emotional energy to keep, I'm not an entertainer. So, but my clients know that, right? You spend a lot of time communicating with them. They get to see that, and then tell them about yourself too. Um, me, I'm a father. I got no problem. Everyone in the world knows that. I love my kids. I love my wife. I'll share stories about how dumb dad things that I have done, right? Like, and it's just people know that if you're a father, you're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days. You might be dealing with something, you may not be dealing with something. Kind of works.
Certainly. And allowing your personality to kind of shine through, I think just allows you to, the clients feel that it kind of goes back to the principle of just being like vulnerable and honest. If you're always like super well put together and you say the most like politically correct thing every single time, just the
Hmm.
professional answer, sounds
Hmm.
like you just speak in Teams chat suggestions, then like it's like that would be super annoying to work with that person.
Hey,
Um,
yeah, and you know what? I think too, like if you're not in a good mood, right? I always fall back to um, sales 101 because we're all in sales. I don't care what anybody says. You're always in sales. You're selling yourself. You're selling a solution. You're selling services. You're selling your advice. You're always in sales. Don't be afraid to ask questions. In sales, it's you never say what you can ask. So if you're having a rough day, just ask questions, not from a defensive tone. Just make it inquisitive and just let the client talk. It's just what it is. That's how I kind of hide some of my bad days. If I'm being too grumpy, I let them know. Sorry, guys, they ran out of maple bacon donuts down the street. I'm not happy. So,
That's funny. I do have to lean sometimes on those team chat suggestions where I want to say something, and then the
huh.
three little options pop up in the bottom corner. I'm like, all right, let me just use one of these. It's got
Right?
the
Because
smiling emoji in it. All right, we're good. We're golden. I
yeah,
need to
because
need to rely on those.
because
I think
you
those are
know,
great. There's,
yeah,
I guess I should mention. I'll go ahead and link the book in the description down below to the
yeah.
the question behind the question. If anybody listening is interested, I want to transition the conversation a little bit based off of, from what I understand of your experience from your intro. It sounds like you were a consultant before, doing business consulting, maybe before you were doing the Power Platform consulting and Microsoft Dynamics. Is that true? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's a little bit. So let me give you a little bit about my background. I
Perfect.
came from so when I started in the industry, it was always writing code or doing something in systems administration or networking. The internet had just it had been around, but companies were really investing heavily in having these like major awesome infrastructures. And so I started off with Cisco and Linux. Um, and so you come into these, I laugh because I was for all intents and purposes, man, I was just a kid, and I came into these office buildings, and I have $3,000-4,000 worth of equipment that these companies just purchased, and they're like they don't even understand what it's for, and then I have to tell them, guess what, guys, the internet's going to be down for an hour, and if they don't get their email, then the whole world shuts off, right? And so it was this it put me in very difficult situations. So I had to rely heavily on learning how to talk to him, right? So the CEO can't stream his granddaughter's his granddaughter's first steps because a 20 this is a true story, a 23-year-old kid comes in and just turns off the internet. That's a real, hey, it's a very interesting situation. So that's why I lean heavily on communicating. Talk to the client, because my company just threw us in there. But if I reached out to the client ahead of time and said, hey guys, you guys got anything going on, we're going to let you know about an outage. I realized that they didn't care if you gave them time to prepare. So that started me off with consulting. And then I switched into business apps because IT consulting with infrastructure, you're always in the red. You cost the company money. They don't really see it as a return on investment. Then I switched to business apps because companies value that. You're always in the black. They love that. They see the multiplier for what you spent is huge. They love you. However, those first that crawl, walk, run is a harder step than anything I've ever seen in my life. So, but the fundamentals to process that are always present. So it's communication. So yeah, as consulting is being an advisor, essentially just being an advisor. And if you're good at giving suggestions and giving advice and understanding your client, not just rattling it off in a cold fashion, Chat GPT is good, but not everybody likes word salad. They want to know that they have that human touch and that there's someone there that gives a dang about what's going on with them. So, consulting has been good for me. And yeah, just that's it. Sorry, I'm talking too much, Griffin.
You're good. No, this is perfect. You mentioned communication skills in that, things you learned in that time, and this is a question that's on the spot. Are there other skills? Obviously, communication skills, like you mentioned. Are there other skills that you learned in this time that allowed you to be a successful business app consultant, eventually architect, eventually into your current role today? Like, what are some skills, maybe soft skills, that you learned in that time that you think reign true for everyone?
Man, this is crazy. When I first got into this, I was hyper focused on the technology. I was learning how to write plugins. I went through a few hundred JavaScript courses. I was dead set on being the most technical individual on the planet Earth. And the first few meetings I had, those skills didn't offer me what I needed to thrive. Survive, yes. But for me to thrive, and I'm not saying I'm discounting technical acumen, I'm not saying that. I said for me to thrive, they didn't care about the technical piece. Being able to connect with your customers or connect with clients was the one skill that helped me to really thrive in this industry. Being able to, and it's personal because my mother was a small business owner. I have most of my family owns their own businesses. You know what it's like for them to make these investments. Now I'm not looking at them at like oh, poor client, let me help you. No, it's just, hey, I understand that you have an outcome that you're looking for, and you may have came to us because you want someone to eat the risk, and you're not necessarily completely confident that you can do it. Understanding where those pain points are and why you're doing it for me and being able to connect with you, that for me is the big win. Applications. You can build all you want, but the relationship with those clients is what matters to me the most. So those soft skills, being able to connect, that's what served me well.
Awesome. I want to talk about one other topic with you. So another transition here, something that we really haven't talked about is the Microsoft MVP status. I love having guests on here and just picking their brain on that. And I'm obviously creating some content,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I would love to hear your side of the story, because I don't know what the percentage would be, but it's got to be like 3/4 of Microsoft MVPs. It feels like are people that create content, whether that's a YouTube video, they have a blog, LinkedIn posts, yada yada, responding in threads and different things. But from what I understand about your MVP journey is you spend a lot more time doing like speaking engagements
Yeah.
and speaking at events. And so I'm interested in your perspective on that side of the house of the MVPs, because I feel like
So
it's not as
so
common or talked about.
yeah. So here's the deal. I think it depends on where you live, where you're from. Um, you know, it's interesting. When I came into this, it was I was doing stuff and before the pandemic, but when we started the pandemic, they were looking for speakers to do stuff remotely, and I had zero clue what an MVP was, and which is funny because like Julie Yak, and I'll pick at Julie, and I'll pick on Trisha. I didn't know who these people were. Trisha Sinclair. I mean, I didn't know what they did. I knew of them. They were just amazing folks. I didn't know what an MVP was. They didn't say, "Hey, I'm Julie Yak, I'm an MVP," or "Hey, I'm Trisha Sinclair, I'm an MVP." They didn't do that. They were just like, "Hey, you need to." We've talked to you, Will. You're a good guy. You need to get your butt up out there and start talking and speaking. So, Julie made me do my first speaking event. Like they threw me into this hackathon, and I'm speaking in front of God knows, I'm gonna say 500 people in Portugal, presenting this app that we built in like a few hours. And my team was amazing, and we lost to some weirdos. I'm not gonna pick where they're at. I'm a bit bitter about that because I'm competitive, and then I'm calling them weirdos because their solution didn't work. Our solution worked. Their solution didn't work, but they sold it better. I'll give them that much. I was a little bit bitter about that, but the point is Julie made me speak. And so after having that initial shock, I looked for opportunities, and Trisha actually gave me a few opportunities initially. So she's the one that said, "Hey, I know it's the pandemic, but you need to get out there and start talking." Now, I wasn't talking to become an MVP. I had absolutely zero desire to be an MVP. In fact, I did not want to be an MVP. I I only did it, and I'll stand by it, and everyone knows it because the community needed representation. So I didn't get it because I was an African American. I got it because, hey, I want to show others, because I'm not going to be in this industry forever. But I wanted to show others that there are people in the community that can look like you. You can be from a poor town in Florida, and you're not necessarily a poor kid, but a low income a low income area. Uh, and you may not have had a master's or an MBA rather, but you can still be something that's cool. You can still have an impact in the community. You can still talk to executives. You can still have the potential to start your own business. Your educational or your status in life, that stuff doesn't matter. Now, let's make this really clear. I'm not some poor. I didn't grow up poor. I didn't grow up in a very difficult neighborhood, but I did not have the life that others who I look at sometimes. I didn't have that life. Nobody had trust funds for me. My sister had scholarships. I wasn't too smart to have the scholarships that my sister had. So I had more of a blue collar background. So you can come into this industry, come into this community, and have an impact, and take that imposter syndrome, put it in its proper place, and keep it moving and do more. So for me, speaking allows me to go out there and do that. I don't necessarily broadcast my past or say that. I think that's probably the first time I ever said that. So that's the first on your show. But it's just I did it for others. So yeah, you can do speaking engagements, Griff, which I think you'd be great at. Hint, hint, drop, drop. And you can also do blogs. It's whatever you necessarily want. But I think it's what Microsoft is measuring is your impact on the community.
I love what you have to say there about, the representation and just showing other people that it's possible. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
And I completely respect that and admire that about you and that kind of responsibility that you want to kind of embody and take on. And that kind of answers my next question was, why do you find speaking at live events more impactful for you and your network? I think that's a huge part of it, as compared to maybe just contributing online. Now, how could somebody say they're listening to this? And I mean, at first, I wasn't even really aware that these speaking events were possible for people that didn't work at Microsoft and different things, a while ago. And how does someone get their foot in the door if, say, they are, would love to be able to do something like that? How would they get their foot in the door to begin speaking at an event and get their name on the list?
Man, all right. So this would actually take us into another. It might be, you might need a part two for this. Bring
Okay.
some others on there. So I'm gonna try to say this without getting myself in trouble. Who cares? So here's the deal. There are plenty of engagements. You can look them out on LinkedIn, right? There's Power Platform 24. There's Scottish Summit. There's Dynamic User Groups. There's Dynamic Con. Like there's opportunities, and I said this before initially. Like we're all in sales, so you're going to sell your solution or sell your presentation. That really helps. Also, to co-presenting really helps. And I tell people, don't put in one session. Put them all in there. Make yourself as available as possible. And even if you don't necessarily get picked, because it's about picking uh, with some of these things. I know that MPPC, they have the anonymous um, submissions, but then people put in their title who they are. So I'm not really sold on that. I'll stand on that. Uh, you have to you can volunteer at these particular conferences. Uh, be that guy at the booth who's answering technical questions. It's for free. Um, you don't have to necessarily even wait to speak at these conferences. Griffin, if you put it out there or somebody puts it out there, hey, I'm actually creating a user group, or I'm actually going to create my own session where I'm just going to have 8 people come in and speak about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 topics. You can do that on your own. I wouldn't necessarily wait to, if I looking back, I wouldn't wait it till I got on with some of these groups before I started presenting. I applied for local user groups and all sorts of fun stuff. Um, but I would just tell others, man, you can start your own. Um, Hell, if anybody wants someone to speak, I'll jump in. I'll help you out. Um, Other MVPs, they're all for it. They're not going to do all the legwork for you, but we're more than happy to come in and help out where we can. So if you're not getting picked for these conferences, which is the norm, because I don't always get picked, um, that's cool. Do your own. If you build it, they will come. Maybe not the first time, maybe not the second time, but give it some time. They will come.
I love that. I don't have anything else to add there. I think, if I said anything, it would take away from what you have to say. So, considering where we're at on time, I'd love to transition us to our after hours happy hour segment of the episode. And this is just a time to talk about anything outside of work. If you want to try to relate it to work, that's fine. But if you're at the happy hour and you're talking about work, like people probably don't like you. So that's
Yeah,
um,
probably.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about your personality and things. You mentioned that you are into fishing and cooking. I love to just hear.
All right, man. I'm a fat boy, so I love, and I'm from Florida, man. I love seafood. Love seafood. But here's the thing: I can't fish to save my life. My father tried to teach me, man, but like I'm not as good as he was. And so when I have my son and he's out there like, hey, teach me how to fish. I'm scratching my head and I'm like, man, I am killing this in a terrible way.
Yeah.
So, he's had to reach out to his uncles to help him out. But I am learning, and so that's one of the things. One of my goals is to become a better fisherman. On top of that, man, I love food, man. So anytime I get to experiment or throw something on the grill, I'm all about it, man. So for me, it's being out in the outdoors, relaxing with my hat, casting my line, or being in the kitchen trying to whip up something real fun, man. I love. I actually had some New York strips that I just did on Thursday with some really good butter and rosemary, medium rare with some garlic mashed potatoes. If I had a picture, I'd show you. But yeah, I think I really hit a home run on that one. So I'm
Yeah,
proud of that.
we're
I'm proud
recording
of
this
that.
at lunchtime right now, so I mean, you're making
Yeah,
me
yeah.
hungry. So
I'm proud of that one. I'm proud of that one, Griff.
that's that's awesome. And fishing as well. I can definitely. So I grew up in Indiana, which is nowhere near an ocean, right? Um, and I guess Lake Michigan, as far as I know, isn't really known for fishing.
Mm-mm.
But there's several lakes around Indiana and different things. But I can definitely remember some of the memories growing up with my dad, my little brother, and going out there and catching some largemouth bass, and probably lost more lures than we kept, and different things because we were just kids throwing them into
Right.
branches and everything. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
super awesome.
But it's like for me, like, because here in Florida we have so much wildlife. You know, yeah, you can see large stingray. You can go out there and see manatee. I was going to an area because I'm gonna keep my spots on all quiet because I don't
Of
want people to come
course,
visit. But
absolutely.
I was in one area where I saw a 10-foot alligator. So you park your car between you and the alligator. You fish on the other side. And so it's a great place being outdoors, and I love that. And no cell phone signal where I go out at because I don't necessarily want to be answering calls, but yeah, man, I love fishing and love cooking, and love being a family man. Don't get me wrong, my kids get on my nerves sometimes, but they're my kids, so yeah, anything I can do that's it.
That's awesome. Well, the conversation has been great. If somebody wanted to connect with you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
So I'm old as dirt. So I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Instagram, but I am on LinkedIn. So if you want to ping me on LinkedIn, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn, and I'll be able to respond. Direct message me. It's all good. Just
Absolutely.
let me know.
Yeah,
Appreciate
I'll,
it, man.
I'll have a link to your LinkedIn down in the description down below. Will, thank you for being here.
Straight up, Griff, man, it's a pleasure. You are phenomenal, man. I love seeing you. You're killing it. I always told you were going to be a star. So I don't want to, hate to say it, but I told you so.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for sticking to end the video. My name is Griffin Lickfelt, the host of Citizen Developer, and I'm excited to connect with you guys in the next one.